So hello everyone. Today I'm going to cover Toads and Frogs game with C++. So first I'll cover the game design. So the game will first prompt the player to enter the board size of n, as in like an odd number, meaning that there has to be a middle value, which is the dash. For each turn, the game will output the current board and the number of moves. The player will input a number between 1 to n, which is the element of the board that the player wants to move. Basically there's going to be a board like this that starts off like, let's say we have 7, and they'll set up a board automatically like TTT slash FFF, and then T represents toads and represents frogs. And so that dash in the middle is that middle value which everything revolves around. So toads can only slide right or jump one square to the right, whereas frogs can only slide left or jump one square over to the left. Basically, like if I moved 3 here, then it would move this toad, the third toad, to the fifth position, which is after that slash. And so that's how the movement works, and the movement differs as toads can only move right and frogs can only move left. So the goal of the game is to try to bring all the frogs onto the left side and all the toads on the right side, meaning it'll end up as FFF and TTT. So basically, the functions of this game. So the code will run through a series of functions which set up the game, draw the screen, get the user's move until it's valid, make the move, and check endgame, which are all basic functions that almost every game needs. And this will all run in a main game loop. But if the check endgame function detects that the game is over, the code exits the main game loop and outputs the endgame information. So in this game, there's not really a losing condition because it goes on forever until the board is satisfied as a winning condition. So it'll run on forever until you win. So there's no losing condition for this, but there's just a winning condition that the check endgame only checks. So now I'll just go through the code. So basically here I have it on Replit. We're basically using C++ here. So first we have to initialize the initialize IOStream using namespace std, and then the basic initialization, which are the variables int n, that's the board size, string board, that's the board, int dash pause, that's where the dash pause is located at. Finish, which it was necessary for check endgame, and cur move, which is the move chosen by the player in the current board. So, and then there's also a number of moves which will always be outputted for every move. And so now let's get to the function. So is valid function checks if the input that the player gives is invalid or valid. So basically, if this is invalid, these are the conditions. If x is greater than equal to 1 and x is lesser than equal to board length, meaning that it's in the boundaries of the board, that means it's valid. But within that thing, if the board x minus 1 is equal to f, and if x is greater than equal to 2 and board x minus 2 is this, that means it'll be output valid, meaning that since the frog can leap, that means that we're checking the index of x minus 2 because left. So 2 units to the left is board x minus 2. That's what we're checking. And we're checking if x is greater than equal to 2, because if x is equal to 2, then 2 minus 2 is 0, and we won't get, and it will go out of boundary. So basically what we need is we have to check this and then output only valid. And then here we also are checking this for the frogs as well. So if x is greater than equal to 3 and board x minus 3 is equal to this, then we output valid, which is also another way to check the boundaries. And so here also we have the toad, which is the same thing as this, except we have x plus 1. And so because x plus 1 gives the indexes to the right and x minus 1 gives the index to the left of the array board. So if x is lesser than board.length and board x is basically a slash, that means that the output is valid, meaning that if toads hops only one square and doesn't jump over another square, this is the condition. And if it jumped over another square, meaning x plus 1 is lesser than board.length, and board x plus 1 is equal to a slash, that means the output is valid. And so every move will replace either the frog or the toad with a slash mark. And so if output is valid, then we'll return 1, and else return 0. So this is an important function because we need to keep checking that it's valid or not. And this code is not applicable infinitely times in a while loop unless we put it into a function. And it's much easier in putting in a function because we could only represent this code as one line in the real while loop. And we'll need to use this invalid function quite a lot. And now setup game basically sets a number of moves to 0, finish to -1, and then takes the input of n from the player, so basically the size of the board. And now dash pause is always the middle value, and the middle value is always n divided by 2, and this automatically rounds the value because dash pause is actually defined as an integer, so it can be a float, meaning decimal. And then we'll have this that actually checks whether whether I is equal to 0, I is lesser than n. That's the basic indexes. And then this checks if I is lesser than n over 2, then we always set board to T. And then if I is greater than n over 2, then board to F, because we always want the toads to be on the left of the dash and the F to be on the right of the dash, feeding the frogs. And then if that's not true, if neither of these are true, that means that has to be the dash position. So now we have void draw screen. So draw screen basically is simple outputting. So we see out the board, we output the number of moves, and then we have an empty line after that. Now the get move function, which prompts user with enter move. And then we have a while loop that's checking if it's valid or not, as we saw before. And then it will print invalid if it's not, and then it's just going to access again. And then if that's not true and it satisfies, then we'll have break. And then we basically exit the loop and proceed. Make move basically swaps the position of the frog or toad in the element that player selects. So if player selects 3, it will swap the position item at position 3 with the dash pause. And we always keep the dash position in a variable, as we saw here, in dash pause. And so with this, we could just use a simple swapping using a temporary variable, setting it to board dash pause to board current move -1, which is the element frog or toad. And then we set this to temp because we can't set this because this is already assigned to board current move -1, meaning it'll just stay the same. So we need to change it, meaning we have to have a temporary variable, that's why. And notice how we have this as a character because these are actually not strings. Although board is a string, board dash pause is actually not a string because it's a character of the string. And now we always subtract dash pause as current move -1. So we have to always subtract 1. Notice we have to always do that because the input that player gives is the element position, but not the index value. And we always increase number of moves by 1 because on every turn we have another move that increases the number value. And we also have to check that and print that every draw screen, as we see here. See out number of moves. And now here we have a check endgame function, meaning we have to check the endgame, and if board equals is solved, meaning that the board is basically solved, that means that we have to return 0, else return -1, and we'll see later how that works. But here we have solved is this, and now solved string is basically the opposite of board. Solved is what the player wants to achieve. Basically, the frogs have to be on the left, and the toads have to be on the right. And now in our int main function, this is the main game loop here. And so we set up the game first, and then we have a while loop that goes on and on until the game is finished, which is finish is greater than -1, and we can always say check endgame because check endgame either returns 0 or -1. and 0 is greater than -1, meaning it will break and output you finish here. But here, in the while loop, we have get move. We always have to ask for the move, and not, don't forget the draw screen function that we have to put in here because we have to keep drawing this outputting the board for the player to understand what to move. And now here we check endgame with finish. We have finish equals a check endgame. And then if finish is greater than -1, meaning if it's 0 basically, then we just break. If it's not, then it keeps going the game is still running in the while loop. And when we break it, we go to the end game information, which outputs the board, outputs the number of moves, empty line, and then says you finish. So let's try to run this code and see if it works. So here, as we can see, we don't get any permutation because we need to enter the size of the board. So let's start at 7. So basically three on both sides, 3 toads, 3 frogs. It outputs number of moves and an access for the move. So let's say I do 3, say 5, 6, 4, 2, 1, 3. And now let's try invalid move basically. Now this is because this is out of the range and not in the boundary, this is an invalid move. So let's try 5, 7, 4. Okay, now we got FT, 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 which is what we want. And 4 is by the way an invalid move because we don't have because we have a dash here, and the number of moves is still 9. So since 4 is 1, 2, 3, it's basically a toad here. We can't replace a toad with the dash here. Now let's see 6, 4, 3. That's an invalid move again. 2, 3. Now we're starting to get closer. And finally, we'll have this. So FFF is what we want, and this is basically the solved board. So it checks if board is equal to solved board. And then we did this in 15 moves. I think you could do better than that, but this is just 15 moves. I showed some invalid moves as well. And it outputs you finish and exits the main game loop. So that's basically how this game works. You could test this out with any side of the board. I tested it with 7 because it's more solid. Let's say not too less, not too much. So yeah, that's how the Toads and Frog games work. So here go to conclusion page. So the Frogs and Toads game is a unique game that can be made with a variety of languages and another great starter project for a language. And so yeah, thank you for listening. Bye.